Hello, Vegas. How you doing? Welcome, welcome. I hope you're all suitably hungover after last night and all golfed out. I'm CCP Lebowski. I'm going to talk to you about our new navigation structures and a few other things coming in the winter, and maybe a little bit of what's beyond that. Some other stuff there. So first of all, as this is my first time here, just a little bit about myself. I'm CCP Lebowski. I'm a QA analyst. I've been working on EVE for almost 8 years now, seven and a bit years. I started working as an outsourced tester with our outsourced testers in Glasgow, Scotland, and then worked there for a few years. And those guys are awesome. What they do, if you guys aren't aware, is that they have over 4,000 tests. And every 2 weeks, they run through every feature in the game and make sure that while we're making new stuff, we're not breaking old stuff. Now that doesn't always work, of course. It's not a perfect system, but it's pretty good, and they're the reasons why we can still develop a 15-year-old game, and the whole thing doesn't come crashing to a halt. Or as Masterplan has often said, they're the reason why we get to change the engine out of a car while it's still going 80 miles an hour. So yeah, in 2013 I moved to Reykjavik, was called up and started working as a QA analyst on Team 5.0, and I've been working there ever since. So Team 5.0, you may know some things about us. This is Team 5.0 as it stands at the moment. So some familiar names there, I'm sure. There's 8 of us. We've been a little bit more, a little bit less over the years, but this is what we look like right now. And we're a team that kind of comprises a little bit of various different disciplines. So you can see we've got a whole variety there. So we're kind of like a self-contained unit. We get to kind of take a feature from conception all the way through to delivery ourselves, and we have everything, for the most part, we have everything there that we need to do that. Now, no CCP presentation would be complete without some graphs, and when I was putting this presentation together, I realized that it would have 0 graphs. So don't worry, I've made up for that. I know, right? So I've made up for that, so here's that information again, but in graph form. Yeah. And then I thought, well, to really fill out the quota, we have the team based on nationality. It's also a prime example of why I should not design UIs of any kind. We have hair length, there we go, long, short, like a good split. We have facial hair, yep, that's pretty good. It's equal split. Now I know what you're all obviously thinking. Is there any overlap there between the long hair and the facial hair, maybe? Well, don't worry, I did my research. Nope, not at all. None at all. So that's the graph section done. All you graph enthusiasts can go back to sleep. We're going to move on to the graphless section of the talk. So Team 5.0, we work on mostly, this is kind of our remit. It's like large-scale sandbox features, veteran gameplay. It's game health. We're one of the teams that often kind of steps in when we need to make some changes based on those kind of things. And then, as you may have noticed, we also have Karka on the team, so we do lots of little things, lots of quality of life things for the game. If you guys haven't checked out her forum thread where you can suggest little things, I really do recommend it. It's an awesome place, and she's often kind of going through that thread and picking out things to do, and we kind of build up a supply of little things that we can move out in one go when we're ready. And then, if anyone's only been around in EVE for the last couple of years, they'll probably know 5.0 for one main thing, and that's our structure crusade. Basically trying to reduce the amount of structured gameplay systems in EVE from way too many to fewer than that. And we're getting there. We've got rid of outposts. We've moved those away now. And as I'm sure you know, all of these kind of different gameplay systems are being kind of condensed into one main one, which is from the Upwell consortium, the Upwell structures. So let's talk a little bit about the new ones and the new paradigm that comes with them. That's the flex structures. So flex. Now, Upwell has been great for us to be able to kind of move you guys out of things like outposts, kind of encourage people to move out of NPC stations. But we've always been trying to compete with the safety and the value of an NPC station. You know, unlimited storage, perfect safety of your stuff, those kind of things that NPC stations give you. So we've been really pushing on the idea that Upwell structures should provide all the kind of safety and functionality of an NPC station with more on top of it, which is why you've seen us adding things like repair services to Upwell structures, why they have things like asset safety, because we're really kind of competing with that paradigm of your stuff's always safe for all time. With flex structures, now that we're getting down to some more specific and specialized versions of the feature set that things like player-owned starbases used to give you, we needed to kind of break that paradigm and give you a new version of the Upwell structures that was somewhat different from that. So, as CCP Berger may have mentioned in his talk, it stands for Fast Logistical Expansion Structures. So they're smaller, usually. They're faster, they're more specialized, they generally just have one function, they do that one function very well. They have limited services, as we alluded to before. This is the list of things they don't have. So they don't have any weapons, they don't have any docking, no tethering, no asset safety, no repair service for your ship. They do have storage, but only for the fuel that they need for their service. And they generally just have one specialized function that they do. So we should talk a little bit about how you deploy these structures. Sorry for all my terrible slides. This is how I amuse myself building this presentation. So deployment is a bit different. With Upwell structures as they are right now, you pick a reinforcement day and a reinforcement hour. So you pick basically your prime day and hour that you want to defend these structures. With these new flex structures, you just pick an hour. You never get to dictate the day in which these structures come out of reinforcement. You just pick your prime time, essentially. And they're much faster to deploy. We're talking minutes or hours instead of days for these structures. Of course, they're subject to the normal things that you get when you're deploying a sovereignty that you don't own. So you get your normal multiplier on time there. And other than one exception, they have all the normal location restrictions. So they can't be within 1,000 kilometers of a Stargate, for example, those kind of things. But they can be deployed within weapon range of an Upwell structure. Now, this got a bit of a ooh yesterday, so don't be too scared. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more with specifics of the structures later on. But for now, let's just say it's not tether range. It's not 0 on a structure. They are within the structure's sphere of influence, but they're not right under, on the undock, for example. The other thing that's a little bit different is they're vulnerable throughout the entire deployment of the structure. So with older structures, you'd have a 50-minute vulnerability at the start, 50 minutes at the end. These are just vulnerable the whole time, so you really have to control the grid and take care of these structures as they deploy. And unanchoring of them is equally fast. Again, we're talking minutes and hours instead of days for these structures. So moving on to how you control these structures. They are a little bit different. Like I said, there's no docking, so you actually board these structures like a ship. So if you're in a ship at the time, think of warping to a ship and jumping into it. You're going to leave your ship behind, or if you're in a capsule, you're just going to jump straight in. Once you do that, you're essentially in the driver's seat. It's like you've assumed control of a larger structure. Now, with this paradigm, it meant that we needed a way for you to get the fuel into the structures. So they're going to be fueled with cargo deposit. You'll be able to drop into cargo deposit. Anyone will be able to drop into the cargo deposit the specific things that they... You're welcome. You'll be able to drop into them the specific things they require, so depending on the type of structure, normally fuel blocks, as you'd imagine, and then they'll just go straight to the fuel bay. And then they're controlled like a structure, so they have a fitting window like a structure does. They have ACLs, they have structure profiles. So in all the other ways that Upwell works, these are going to be the same. And then let's talk a little bit about how long they live, what their life is like. So they have high power and low power, just like other structures, but the life cycle is a little bit smaller. So with high power, you've got one reinforcement period. That's going to be 1 to 24 hours. So it's basically, once it's reinforced, it will pick the next prime hour that the owner has chosen that's more than 1 hour in the future. Again, like other Upwell structures, you'll be able to hack these to find out what that prime hour is, so you can plan your attack to get the minimum amount of time. Of course, if you attack in the defender's prime time, then you might have more trouble initially reinforcing it. And like with other Upwell structures, the final reinforcement that they have turns off their service module. So that'll turn off their function during the reinforcement period. So this is what that kind of looks like. It does still have 3 layers of hit points. So that's a shield repair timer. Once you get through the shield repair, 15 minutes, it doesn't reinforce at all. It just goes straight into armor, and a new armor repair timer will start. If you successfully chew through the armor, you then have your 1 to 24-hour reinforcement time, and then you have your final hull repair. It's worth mentioning that these numbers are just what we have at the moment. These could change based on feedback. The hull repair, for example, is just 30 minutes because that's what it is for larger structures, but absolutely with feedback we could change that. And then in low power, no reinforcement at all. You can kill it straight away. So it's the same chart, basically. There you go, except no minutes between. You can just chew through the whole thing. And this is, we don't want these things sticking around without any functionality going on. So you can just kill these things straight away. We'll get to that, because now we're going to talk about, that was the question of what about the DPS gap. So we're going to talk about how this new paradigm works specifically for our first set of flex structures, which is the navigation structures. So like I say, these are the first line of flex structures from Upwell. When we initially sat down and started working on this feature, we had some specific goals in mind, as you'd imagine. So the first and foremost one, as it's been with a lot of these Upwell structures, is to replace and improve that functionality that you had previously with Cyno beacons, Cyno jammers, jump bridges. Second one was to ensure that the owners can provide more granular access to those services. That's something that we get for free with Upwell structures, which is great. We can allow you to really define who gets to use these services. It's not just based on kind of corp ownership or standings. And finally, ensure that attackers have ways to disrupt the infrastructure of enemies. This is something that we kind of lamented was a bit lost, and I know players have often brought this up as well. This was something that was lost a little bit with the Upwell structures. Previously you had things like, you had station services that you could disrupt, you had pause guns and things that you could incap individually. With an Upwell structure, you really just have, it's there, it's at full, it does all its stuff, or it's dead. And those are the only two, it's a very binary system. So we wanted to make sure that these smaller structures could act as points of infrastructure that you could mess with and kind of like deal damage without having to kill an entire Upwell structure in one go. So those were our 3 main goals when we were going into this. And this means that, again, as Berger mentioned before, or I should call him CCP, steal my thunder, we may be reaching the end of this process of removing player-owned starbases, hopefully therefore reducing the structure systems in EVE down by 1 again. Now, we know that there are certain, while we're hitting the high-level functionality of a lot of the previous structure system, there's still some kind of niche gameplay and some other different types of gameplay that we feel like we're kind of lacking with Upwell structures. So things that come to mind are that kind of idea of a beachhead structure for wormhole invasions, or someone who wants to dip their foot into structure gameplay for the first time. So I wouldn't say that we're completely complete with replacing this kind of functionality and this kind of gameplay. But in terms of the big high-level things, we're reaching the end now, and that's really exciting for us to finally get the pause system out of the game. We've been talking a lot internally about what we'll do with all that code once we finish this process. There's been talk of a Viking funeral for the code. Seems kind of bad for the environment, but maybe we'll work out a more eco-friendly way of burning it all down. Yes, so more about the navigation structures. So they have a unique thing where they actually come with the permanently fitted service module. So normally you'd buy a service module that you want the functionality for that functionality. These ones just come with a service module fitted. They can't be removed. They don't drop when they get killed. They're just kind of like they act as a button to turn that service on and off. They use fuel blocks, as normal Upwell structures do. They also have the onlining cost for onlining the service, similar to other service modules. And as with the previous structures that these are replacing, they need their corresponding iHub upgrade. So they jump, the kind of navigation-related iHub upgrades, strategic upgrades will need to be fitted to turn the service module on. This works a lot like the supercapital construction facilities for the CTO, for example. So it's not based on the owner of the system, it's just that the system you're in has to have the upgrade, and obviously the owner of the iHub could always turn that service off and kill your structure in one go with this new system. So turning that service module on activates their function. And for now, as with the previous structures that these are replacing, these will be conquerable nullsec only for the time being. There's always an option of these to move out, as we did with things like moon mining, where we moved this system out into other areas of space. So please talk to us if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. But for now, we're going one-to-one, and we're replacing the functionality that already existed. And then let's talk about some of the specific structures then. So as you saw yesterday, the Pharolux is the Cyno beacon replacement. As you'd imagine, it works like a Cyno beacon. It allows you to jump and bridge with capable ships to that location based on an ACL now. So you can make these public. You could make them available to your entire corporation except that one guy, for example, or those kind of things. This is what the shield armor and hull looks like at the moment. So 1.5 mil for the shield and armor, and then 3 mil for the hull. They do have a damage cap. It's 5,000 at this time, so I'm sure you can do the math quite quickly and work out how long that takes to kill them. It is quite a short amount of time it would take at max damage to reinforce one of these things, for example. And with the Cyno beacon, there is a maximum of 1 per system. So you could only ever deploy one of these at a time. If one of them gets reinforced, then it will stay reinforced until it's killed or repaired. You wouldn't be able to online a new one during that time, which is a bit of a change for some of these structures. And then the one that I'm sure people are worried about, the minimum distance from an Upwell structure for the Cyno beacon is 200 kilometers. So they're outside of scram range, for example. They are within weapon range of these structures, but they're not right on the undock, for example. And then for deployment and anchor times for these structures, 45 minutes. It's very short. They go up really quickly, but like I say, will be vulnerable during that entire time. So yeah, and as I mentioned before, they use ACLs, so you can make these things public. And then we have the Cyno Jammer next. Now this one, as you can imagine, is a bit different. We had a lot of great feedback and a lot of exciting arguments online about these structures that we saw. So as before, it prevents the activation of any non-covert Cyno beacons in the system, as you'd imagine. This one's a bit chunkier, a little bit longer to reinforce. It has the same damage cap, but it's a little bit longer to reinforce this. Remember, you'll have to go through the shield and the armor to reinforce these structures. And with this one, we were certainly worried about the idea that hitting one of these things could, reinforcing one of these things, sorry, could stop Cyno jamming in a system for up to 24 hours if the defender isn't around to do anything about it. So you can still reinforce these things, as with the other structures, but they have a little bit of a different gameplay around them. So they're actually 3 per system maximum, with only one module online at any time. So you could theoretically anchor 3 in your system at all times. That does mean that the offline 2 will be killable straight away. So really what this means is that if one gets reinforced and the defender wakes up the next day and finds that his jammer is offline, he could deploy and online another one if he can control the system during that time. You remember, you'd have to defend this thing the whole time it's vulnerable. And then you kind of get a little bit of a cat and mouse gameplay around this thing. It only goes up to a max of 3, so theoretically you can continue to reinforce them to the point where there are 3 reinforced structures in the system. And then at that point, there's no way to do anything but wait out the reinforcement cycle. The other thing that I know people were super scared about, and that we've recently implemented to the system, is a spool up time for the jammer. So the service module comes online instantly, but then it takes 5 minutes to actually online the jammer functionality. This will be displayed when you, as the owner, when you turn it online, you'll get the 5-minute timer there, and then we'll also display this in the interface for everyone in system. this was one of those things where it was trivially easy to get this information beforehand by just kind of splitting your fuel stacks or not being in a fleet when you activate a Cyno. So that wasn't really great gameplay, so we've just moved this into the systems info. This will tell you whether it's not jammed, whether it is jammed, and whether there's a jammer spooling up. So you'll know that if you see jammer spooling up, that within the next 5 minutes, one will be online. As with the other numbers here, this is open to change. This is recently implemented, so we're really interested in your feedback on that spool up time. And this jammed system status will also show for other jammer effects. So incursions, for example, would also show jammed in this interface as well. And then we have the minimum distance from the Upwell structure. A little bit shorter for this one, 150 kilometers. This is basically because this doesn't have kind of a sphere of influence around it where ships will land. We wanted the beacon to be further out so that you can engage ships on either side of it as they come through the beacon. With the jammer, it's just a jammer. It just sits there. So 150 kilometers for this one. And the deployment and on-anchor time is the same. It's 45 minutes for this structure. Right. So then we get on to the big daddy, the jump gate. So this chap is awesome. As you've seen the artwork for this already, we're going to show you some of this artwork again soon with some really cool effects. So as you'd imagine, it links to another jump gate. It allows travel between two systems, and in every way we've tried to simulate the way that a Stargate works with this. So for example, if you're elsewhere in the system and you click jump, it'll automatically warp you there. All the selected item options work for jumping. All the radio menu options work for jumping in the same way that a Stargate would work. As Berger mentioned before, there's no requirement for you to be linked to a gate under the same owner. The way that this works is actually you just align it to a system. We'll get into that a little bit in a minute, but let's just go through the stats before we do that. So this has the same stats as the beacon, basically, in a lot of ways. 1.5 million for shield and armor, and 3 million for hull. Again, it has the same damage cap of 5,000. Again, with the beacon, max per system 1. Minimum distance from Upwell structures, 200 kilometers, for the same reasons we mentioned for the beacon. We want you to be able to attack the ships that come through the gate without being right underneath the guns of the structure that it's on grid with. And it also has the same deployment and anchor time of 45 minutes. And as with the jump bridge that came before it, at the moment, the max distance is 5 light years. It, again, may change in the future, but this is a one-to-one replacement for now. So this is something that we could look at in the future. And same as before, it uses jump fuel. There are a few changes that have gone along with this, though. I'm not sure how much of this is known yet. It's hard to keep track. There's no jump fatigue for these structures anymore. So no jump fatigue at all. And also, there are no ship size restrictions of any kind. So yeah, these are pretty exciting. These are pretty exciting now. They work for all ships. Of course, you're going to probably pay a lot in jump fuel for this, but I'm sure you guys won't mind too much. So as I alluded to before, the way the deployment system works, you deploy it into space. At that point, you get given a list of every system that's within range. That list will also list whether there's a jump gate there, whether there's a jump gate pointing back at you from that system. So it makes it really easy to link up those networks. Once you press the deploy button after you've chosen a system, the model of the gate itself actually aligns to that system, that star in space. So it's really cool. Depending on what you're putting up, you might have a jump gate, like as with real Stargates, that's kind of flat or that's leaning back. Or it's really, really cool. And then once both gates have been deployed, once they've finished their deployment period, and you online the service modules on each gate, then we get that awesome effect when the gates link together. And as before, they use ACLs so that you can make these public if you want. Now, one thing that we wanted to do to really support the idea of doing gates with more access than they had previously was add the ability to tax these gates. So with ACLs, in the same way that you would tax things like industry, you can add tax levels for different profiles. This tax is done on a cost per unit of liquid ozone. So you can dictate how much anyone would pay, regardless of the ship size, for example, for a unit of liquid ozone. To really help the system along, we also wanted to add something that the CSM suggested, which we thought was really great, which is that now you'll have a personal auto-pay option in your wallet so that you can say, if the price is below X amount per unit, just pay the cost, I don't care. Don't get me stuck on this gate with a confirmation box. So that's, yeah, no one wants that. So that'll be in your personal wallet, kind of like the auto-pay options that corporations have in their wallets, very similar to that. So yeah, that's how that works. I hope you guys enjoy this. I think it's going to be really exciting to see what we do with this. We're also, one thing I forgot to add on here is that we're making sure that all this will be supported in the map. So that we're working to try and implement it so that you'll see all jump gates in the jump networks in the map. With the ones you have access to, kind of colored differently perhaps. We're hoping that we can get that working. But hopefully, when you look at the map of New Eden now, you'll see much more of a vibrant world of all these networks moving around. That's going to be really exciting to see. So all of this is actually available on Singularity this weekend, I hope. So the code's already there, the structures already exist. We've just been holding off on seeding them a little bit until today. So hopefully, CCP Habakkuk, hi CCP Habakkuk if you're watching, will seed these for us over the weekend, but if not, it'll be early next week. Devblog is in the works for this. This will have all this information and hopefully more detail. Hopefully going to come out next week. We're going to see how quickly we can get this out to you with all this information. And I hope you really enjoy this. Now I'd want to get CCP Salvo up on stage with me. Here he is, there, and he's going to help me talk through some of these awesome effects that we've got for you.
Since this is my first time here at EVEVegas, a quick introduction. I'm CCP Salvo. I'm the art manager for the audio and graphics team for EVE Online. And I'll be talking about the graphics for these new structures. Okay, awesome. Okay, first up we've got the jump gate. Now, since this is pretty much similar in functionality to the Stargates, we thought we would use the same type of effect for it. The CCP Merker and who's our lead effect artist and our graphics programmers worked on a new state system to allow us to control how we activate effects or give us greater control about how we activate effects. So this is the first, when you activate this gate, when you link it, this is the effect that will be playing?
Yeah, so this will play at the same time on both gates as soon as they link up.
And since we now have greater control about how we can play effects, we looked at the first Stargate and the single effect that always plays whenever you jump through a Stargate. Now we can change it to having individual activations like that. And then a few people going. And then a lot of people going.
Wait for it.
And then we have the same type of effects for the arrival.
Look at that blink in the distance.
Just a couple. And some more. And some more.
I just love the idea of someone freaking out when they see this. Oh, God!
And then here we have the Cyno jammer. This will be the activation effect.
You notice it has a placeholder name there. That's not staying. So that's it online. And then that pulse effect just kind of stays the whole time it's online, right?
That's the online effect that will continuously cycle. And then finally the Cyno beacon. Again, the activation effect. And then this is what it'll look like as it cycles. Okay. All right.
There we go.
And I just wanted to mention that the effect that we put on the jump gate forms the basis for the racial effects for the different Stargates. Lebowski will show you those a little bit later.
Thank you very much, Salvo. So yeah, super awesome. I'm really excited about these now. Yeah, so you've seen a bit of this before, and the video I'll show you is actually some of the video you've already seen. But I wanted to take you through some of those informational icons that you've maybe spotted on the videos that we've shown so far for the Stargate upgrade. So there's 3 parts to this upgrade. As Salvo mentioned, we have the awesome renovation of a lot of the Stargate models and all the effects for these Stargate models. What we've also done is we've created factional banners for the owners of the Stargates, for the empires, for the system that you're currently in, and then for the destination system, which will show on the Stargates, giving you that really feeling of like a living world. You get that real distinction as you travel through the world. And then we have these informational holograms that we're showing on the Stargates now that are going to show some information about the system you're jumping into. So let's go through those a bit. So let's look at the banners first. So first off, we of course made the 4 banners for the 4 nations, the 4 main factions. So these are really nice. You obviously got Caldari, Galente, Mimitar, Amar. But then we went on, of course, and made a banner for every owner of any system in the game. And a few extra ones on the end there that you're welcome to freak out about or not. The art team's very diligent, of course. Yeah, so we have all those here. We also have some variants of the main nations that we hopefully will one day be able to get into the game. Right now, we're just doing it based on the ownership of the system. So we're going to show these for all the different owners that exist in game. And then we have the informational icons that we're showing. So first things first, the pretty self-explanatory one, which is the security status of the system that you're jumping into, from 1.0 all the way down to 0.0. Then we have the traffic levels, and this goes from gate close, which will be obviously a very rare one. That will be for population capped systems, which are rarely a thing that much anymore. And then we have low traffic levels, medium traffic levels, high traffic levels. We're going to deliberately keep these a little vague. We're not going to say that when there's been 500 jumps, for example, then it's a high traffic level, but this will give you a nice indication of like a feel of like the living world. So I imagine Jita Gate will never drop below, the Jita Gates will never drop below high, for example. And then we have a rough idea of the danger level. This will be based on ship and pod deaths in the next system. Again, we're not giving you specific, we're not going to tell you like someone just died on the next gate, be careful. This is just going to be high danger systems, yes, this information will not be real time. It'll be similar to the map filters that we already have for this information. So it's probably going to be at least 5 minutes cached, but it'll still give you a good indication of whether activity has been happening in the next system. Then beyond that, we have some alert icons and some informational icons for kind of SOV events, factional warfare events, and incursions. So on the top level there, we have you're entering a sovereignty system, you're entering a factional warfare system. They'll display by default. And then we also have one for whether these are in currently like a contested state, whether there's an ongoing campaign in that system, those kind of things. And then, of course, we have the watch out, there's an incursion happening, don't die to the gate rats kind of icon on the end there. And then we have the warning notice. What this will do is this will appear above the line of icons whenever there's something that we deem to be a threat in the lower level. So whether it's like an incursion or whether it's high danger, something like that, this will appear above to kind of draw your attention to those. So let's, with that all in mind, let's go back and look at one of those videos that you saw a little bit of yesterday, of these in action. So this is still work in progress. So you see the icon on the far left there isn't actually one of the ones we ended up using. But you can see that this is a Caldari system you'll be jumping into. This is one of the new, the revamped Caldari gates with the Caldari effects. Looking really awesome there. And you can see it actually currently just has the default Alliance logo, but that will be any Alliance logo, so that includes all you guys with your sovereign nations. That will be your logo on the top of the gate, or the bottom, depending on where you are. And the great thing I love about this that I've been mentioning all the way through is that there's no way for you to choose to customize the gate and say, I don't like that fat B on the top of my gate. For example, the only thing you can do is go and take the next system to get rid of the B, or get rid of the dinosaur, or whatever you want. Not to single anyone out. Yeah, so that's also coming in on November release. Hopefully, I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be the thing that most people who play the game will see day one. This will be the first thing that people see, your first warp to a gate. So I'm really excited about that. And then I do want to talk to you about war declarations and what our plans are, and elaborate slightly on what Berger said yesterday. But before that, I want to talk about a few of the things that we couldn't get to out to you guys this year that we still want to kind of mention. One is the propaganda structures, which I'm sure you guys have seen in the CSM minutes, and some of the models are on Singularity. This is something that we definitely really love, and we love the idea of being able to give you structures to recruit, to advertise, to kind of like fly your flag, to show your colors, those kind of things, to create a huge monument to your glorious leader, those kind of things. We think that's really cool, and there's some great gameplay around that. It's not something that we're going to bring to you this November, but it may be something that we get to next year, depending on what our roadmap looks like. We're really excited about these. And then we have the structure skins that I know people have seen some stuff about. We did a lot of work on this year, and then other things kind of came up that we wanted to address first, things like war decks, and things like making sure that all our structure stuff was working on the Chinese server, which is a big deal when we're releasing, as you saw, like 3 huge structure expansions at once. That was a big scary task for us. So we wanted to make sure that those things got right first. Structure skins may be something that we bring you in the future. I love the idea of corporations and alliances being able to band together to get these structures, these skins for their structures. So watch this space for more on this in the future. And then the player forward operating bases that have been mentioned quite a bit. This is kind of touching on that idea that not all of POS's functionality, the functionality of POS's has been replaced with the Upwell structures, and we're aware of this. And this was kind of our idea of providing a line of structures that would maybe offer like a temporary beachhead, somewhere to essentially go AFK when you go to the toilet or something like that. Maybe something for someone who wants to build their first ever structure, something with limited capabilities, but just getting your foot in the door, whether that be in a contest over a system or into the structure game. This is something that we're still really interested in, and with the work that we've been doing to get the flex structures working, some of the work for this is out of the way now. It's just not something that we're bringing you in November. We want to keep working on this until we get it right. So again, watch this space in the future. We may have more to report on this next year. So moving on to, as we said before, the elephant in the room. So war declarations. So just to quickly go through the basics of what Berger said. They've had problems for a long time. We understand this. This is something that I don't think many developers at CCP would disagree if I said that it's been near the top of everyone's list for a long while. It's just not something that we've had the time to look at. But now we managed to get our data team to do some awesome research on this, some really, really cool stuff. And CCP Berger kind of outlined a lot of what we found with that yesterday, a lot of the shocking or not so shocking data that we managed to gather for this. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in the short term, and then talk about what our goals are for the medium term with this feature. So as CCP Berger said yesterday, starting in December, war declarations will only be possible against corporations and alliances with structures. So notice I said alliances there. That also means that any corporation, like if any corporation in an alliance has a structure, that alliance becomes vulnerable. At the moment, this will include Upwell structures, player-owned customs offices, and probably starbases. The thing with starbases at the moment is that there's literally a handful of them left in HiSec, maybe a bit more than that, but yeah, not many. So we're also considering the idea that in December we may just make aggressing a pause in HiSec a suspect level offense. Wouldn't require a war deck at all. So more on that as we get closer. This is something that we're still considering, weighing up the pros and cons of. And then another potential for this time period, nothing that we can guarantee at this point, but I wanted to just let you know this is something we're thinking of, would be that potentially corps and alliances also need a structure to be able to war deck. So this will be moving towards that idea that there will be a goal for the defender, which is something that we're really interested in, the idea that should you kill a structure, the war decker's structure, that would invalidate the war. It's a very, very tiny first step, of course, but it's one of the directions we're interested in exploring. So, of course, this is really a baby step. There's a bunch of problems with this that we need to resolve, so I wanted to just address some of the things that we're looking at the moment, some things that we're aware of, some things that we're looking to get sorted in this time period. So, of course, there's existing wars. We'll need to do something to invalidate wars that no longer fit this criteria. We're bearing that in mind. It'll likely be that they'll run and then just invalidate on the next renewal. Transferring structure ownership. This is one of the things that, like, day one when we started talking about this, we were like, wait, can't you just instantly transfer someone like a Raitaru and then declare war on them? Like, just basically upping the cost of the war by one small structure. So we're going to need to deal with this. The initial plan at the moment is that likely there'll be some sort of system where you need to accept the transfer of a structure, for example, rather than it just being an instantaneous thing. Then there's mutual wars. We love mutual wars. We don't want to get rid of them. At no point have mutual wars been in this conversation as part of the problem with wars. That's great. There's lots of mutual wars out there. Some mutual wars between like gangs of like three people versus 3 people and stuff like that there. That's not the people we're looking to target with this. And also there's things like red versus blue and those kind of ideas of having large-scale mutual wars that we don't want to step on. So we're absolutely considering that with this process. We don't want to destroy those. And then of course there's the idea of alliances, how that works with this idea that any corporation owning a structure would make them vulnerable to a war. What happens when a corporation leaves that alliance? What happens with a corp with no structures joins an alliance with structures? Those kind of ideas. These are all things we're working out, and we're going to try and get right for December. And then there's the question of what happens after that. So I hope this isn't too disappointing, but I absolutely don't want to share a design with you at the moment because we're not there, and we want to get that right before we start sharing those ideas. But I can share the goals that we've agreed on with, between ourselves and other people in CCP, the things that we really want to achieve with this change. So first and foremost, everyone should be able to understand why, what happens in a war, understand the system. Basically, this is kind of 101. You want your players to be able to understand what's going on. Wars are a thing at the moment where they're a little bit buried, and there's always that idea that an inexperienced player could learn about the fact that they're at war by getting killed by a war target. And we never want that. We want people to be aware you're at war. Here are the ramifications of that. Here are the rules for that war. So that's our primary goal at the start. The reason that you're at war should be understood. The reason why someone can declare war at you should be understood. They should understand how you've been exposed to that. That's really important again, and this kind of touches on what we're trying to do in December with the structure stuff. Both defenders and attackers experience strong agency over their fate in warfare. So this is again touching on that idea of objectives, the idea that wars could potentially be based around a structure or a defender structure, something where you'd have to put something on the line that the defending side of a war could maybe kill themselves or hire mercenaries to do. We really want to get away from that idea that the best thing you can do in a war is leave your corporation or stop playing. both those things obviously are awful, especially when we want to encourage people to be in player corporations. You know, we know that that's one of the most important things about EVE, is getting into a player corporation, playing with other people. That's what keeps people playing. That's what makes people love this game. That's the real joy of this game. So we want to encourage that whenever we can and make sure that people know, I'm a defender in a war, here's what I do. And that follows on quite nicely to this. Wars should increase engagement rather than discourage participants. So as CCP Berger mentioned, right now it's really stark. When a war gets declared in a corporation, for the most part, their activity drops really steeply, and almost more discouraging is that once the war's over, that activity never really recovers to the same level it was before. So, you know, if you contrast this with nullsec warfare, war is the kind of thing that makes people subscribe again, makes people want to play, makes people get engaged a lot of the time. And in these kind of problem wars that we're seeing in HiSec, it's the exact reverse. It makes people want to stop playing. And that idea that the best thing I can do is not play is you know, is awful for EVE. That's not what we want at all. So this is really kind of tying this whole thing together. You should want to log in. You should want to fight these guys. You should want to defend your stuff. You should want to kick down their sandcastle and teach them a lesson, forever declaring war on you, those kind of ideas. And as I mentioned, no concrete designs at the moment. We're really working on this hard now and trying to get this right. And we're going to have more info with you, for you when we're further along with this process. This is likely going to come early next year as we start to make these designs more concrete. And yeah, so we really look forward to talking about this stuff with you in the future. And kind of getting your feedback on this. If you have any feedback at the moment, of course, you're welcome to come and grab me at any point during this weekend, or you know, hit us up online on the forums and things. And really, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, I'm not sure how much time we have left now. We have a little bit of time for questions now, and then we also have the structure roundtable across the way in about 10 minutes if you want to come join me. But thanks very much for attending this. I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great Vegas.